Hello, and welcome back to Roots Remain, a Resilient Parenting Podcast. My name is Abby, parenting coach and host of our show, and also fellow mom walking through the messy middle of motherhood right alongside with you. I'm so excited for our topic today. I know last week when we were talking about some of the behavioral pieces that can come from our reactive parenting, from those messages of shame that we might be holding on to, which was from the week prior, talking about where that shame kind of comes from. And today, why I'm so excited is because it kind of ties together some of those themes in a different light. We are going to be talking about what it really means to be a good mom, and why so many of these kind of rules we've been told or handed are setting us up for failure. So get excited with me to hopefully start to see yourself in a different light. I want you to think about some of the rules that society might put on you or you might put on yourself. Some of these kind of like scripts or narratives that a lot of the moms I work with tend to hold on to. It's these ideas of like, well, a good mom would never lose her temper. A good mom would always keep perfect routines. A good mom always puts their kids first. A good mom would never let their children do some of the things that they're doing. A good mom would never let their child fail. A good mom would never have an explosion out in front of her kids. All of these ideas of like what a good mom are, I think are actually setting us up to be perfect moms. Because a perfect mom, I don't even know that I would want a mom like this, but I guess somebody who could like always keep it cool 100% of the time and be 100% attuning to my needs and make sure that I'm okay, but not like smother me, right? That it's like, as I'm even trying to come up with this idea of what a perfect mom looks like, it is none of those things. I think in reality, I want a good mom, just like my mom. She's the best. I want to be a good mom for my children, and I want you to know that you are a good mom for yours. So a lot of this pressure, I think, comes from, especially with the introduction of social media, that it can be such a great thing and it can be so damaging because it introduces so much comparison for us. When I think about Pinterest, right? And that there's so many ways that you can go and look up activities for teens or things to do with my children. That there's always these like really beautiful spreads and picture perfect moments that some moms or teachers have put together. And major kudos to those people who have the capacity and can do those things consistently. And I will tell you, being on this side of things, I know that so rarely is that ever what's actually going on. And so if you find yourself comparing yourself to other moms on Instagram or what other moms are doing, all the other quote perfect moms out there that seem like they're crushing it, first, I want you to check how much of that is actually realistic. And also, why are you comparing yourself to them when you are a different mom to your children and you're probably the exact mom that your children need? If there are ways that you are wanting to show up differently, we can always tweak that. But comparing yourself and thinking that you are not a good enough mom is going to be so much more detrimental to you than thinking that you are good enough and stepping into that kind of parenting. So stop looking at the Pinterest, Instagram worthy pages and start tuning into what does it mean for you to be a good enough parent? What does it mean for you to be the kind of mom you want to be? And I think this is one of those questions that tends to stump the clients that I work with, is because so often we are looking and we're striving and we're comparing. And when it comes down to it, when we kind of have to do this internal inward reflection, people start to realize it's very different than what they're striving for, because they actually get to tune into their strengths. They actually get to tune into their children. They actually get to tune into the kind of parent they really want to be. And it allows them to show up with more freedom because they're not living under so much pressure of being a good enough mom, which again, I think is just under the disguise of being a perfect parent. So thinking about like these impossible standards that you're setting yourself up for, it makes sense if you're failing in them because they're impossible. Just like we don't want to set unrealistic expectations for our teens, we don't want to set unrealistic expectations for ourselves. You would not expect your teen to know how to do all the things that you know how to do as an adult if they're 14, 15, 16. When they're 17 or 18, you might expect a little bit more from them. But just like you're going to expect them to still be teenagers and still learning and figuring it out, this is your first time parenting each child in the way that they need to be parented. It's your first time too. It's okay to learn as you go. It's okay to not get it perfect. It's okay to focus on how do I show up and be good enough instead of striving for constant perfection so that I'm not trying to reach for an unrealistic standard, but I'm actually going to be able to hit the mark and give my children what they need, which ultimately is going to help fill my needs for feeling like, hey, I'm actually a decent mom. I'm good enough, instead of maybe some of the shame messaging you keep yourself stuck in. So why some of these rules from society don't work? It's because they lead to shame. And shame leads to that reactivity that we talked about last week. That's where some of those behaviors that we're really not proud of start to show up. And ultimately, reactivity leads to disconnection. I cannot tell you how many teens I have worked with over the years where we're trying to work on repair with their relationship with their parents, and they so desperately do not want to start talking or loop their parents in because they're terrified of that reactivity. They're terrified of that disconnection. And even as I say that, if your stomach just sank, if you had this like overwhelming sense of guilt or shame, I want you to know that sometimes these things happen. And again, it's about how do we move forward? How do we change? How do we work on responsiveness instead of reactivity so that we have connection over disconnection? And again, that's where I'm leading it back to. We've got to start with challenging that shame, with challenging these impossible standards so that you're not adding so much pressure to yourself and you're actually able to show up as the parent you want, which is not from a place of shame, which means that you then have more grace and compassion for yourself, which means you're going to be able to show up and be more responsive with your children, which means in turn, you're going to be able to be more connected with them, even in conflict. So these rules of society also don't account for the reality of raising teens. Teenagers are literally designed to have a desire for increased independence. That means they're going to push back more. There's going to be more unpredictability with them. And even though it is uncomfortable to a certain extent, teens are supposed to test their limits. That's part of where boundaries are so important, even if they're uncomfortable. And if we have just these Pinterest designed to have what you're going to do with your teen when they show up, and if it doesn't work for you, then there's something wrong with you. No. That template on Pinterest is not going to work for everybody, especially if it's not tailored to you and your situation. And a lot of this parenting advice and things that I hear kind of make it, I say this all the time as well, a one-size-fits-all approach, when so rarely is that ever the case. Every teen is unique and different. And though there are similar themes and absolutely there's developmental truths, the way that you implement parenting with them, the way that you're showing up, the way that things go in your house is going to be different. And that's okay. It's more about figuring out how to implement those skills and tools to make them work for you instead of feeling like we do not fit in this box. What's wrong with us? Were we supposed to fit in the box to begin with? Is that even a realistic box? So I want you to start thinking about it this way. Is it really the rules of society that are broken? Is it really me, or is it the rules of society? And I already told you the answer. It's the rules of society that are broken, not you. And I know we talked a lot about different core belief shifts last week, and there's a few more that I want to challenge with you, which is you're not behind. So if you're hearing this today and you're like, Abby, I am falling apart, I'm not doing half of the things that you're talking about, that's okay. You're rebuilding. I also need you to keep this one at top of mind, which is a good mom isn't perfect. She is present. And I talk about this one often as well, but calm isn't a personality trait. It's a skill that you practice. So I think about other skills too, right? That if you're like, Abby, I'm naturally just like not very good at communication. Guess what? How do you get better? You practice. If you're not very good at cooking, it doesn't mean you're expecting to be a 5-star chef. It just means you practice, you get better. If you struggle at being calm and tend to get reactive, that's okay. You're going to practice and get better so that you can become the calm leader in your family. I also want you to think about connection isn't weakness, it's leadership. So if you feel like connecting with your child is hard for you, I want you to know that that doesn't mean you're suddenly like handing them the parenting baton. It just means you're taking the moment to attune to them. You still get to be the leader. You still get to be the parent, but you are getting to show up in a way that is more connected and grounded. And honestly, it's going to take you further in your parenting with them. So those are just some of the belief shifts behind why you are a good enough parent, why you're a good enough mom, and why we need to start working on those belief shifts, because I'm going to jump in a little bit into the research of what being a good enough parent even means. So Dr. Dan Siegel, who has written multiple books about child and adolescent development, he's fantastic. He's talked about how we only need to get parenting right about 30% of the time for our kids to thrive. And I do want to put this caveat in that it doesn't mean you only get to show up 30% of the time. It just means that you're able to mess up and that your child's going to be okay. This is, again, where we want to focus on being good enough parents, not perfect parents. I don't want you to feel like you have to be the perfect mom, that you have to just show up intentionally at least 30% of the time. Now, the idea behind being a good enough parent actually came from a doctor, I believe the 1950s, Dr. Donald Winnicott. And he's the one that coined the term being a good enough parent. And so when I bring up this 30% statistic, I'm not saying you just got to be there 30% of the time and the rest will figure itself out. There is actually some more science behind what being a good enough parent looks like. And one of those pieces is the acceptance of imperfection. So being a good enough parent means that you know you're going to make mistakes and that your children need to learn that this is part of reality, that they're going to have to learn how to cope through your mistakes too. But being able to accept imperfection is part of being a good enough mom. Another piece of this is being responsive in your caregiving. That's where that 30% again is talking about we only need to really get right 30% of it, because what is going to help make up the rest of that 70% is responsive caregiving. So it doesn't mean that you're going to respond to every need. You're not even going to be able to, but being attuned to your teen, being attuned to what their needs are, and being able to help them in their distress, creating that sense of security is part of being a good enough mom. The next part, which I love because it's all about resilience building as being a good enough parent, that by experiencing both success and failure, your teen is going to learn to adapt and problem solve, and that's going to help build their sense of self. And so they have to go through those things, and that's something that you get to help model for them, that you get to show them how you approach success and failure, how, like we talked about last time, how you get back up again from getting knocked down, how you problem solve, how you exhibit your sense of self. And that's going to help in your own resilience building and then what you model for your children. And that healthy emotional development is another piece of good enough parenting, because you're going to be able to create a space for emotion regulation, which means you're allowing your teen to experience their range of emotions and learn how to manage them effectively. I think this is that other part that I see a lot with moms is it can be really hard to watch your teen struggle and hurt and feel sad or mad or feel shame or guilt. And I know you just want to jump in and fix it for them. But truthfully, being able to let your teen have those emotions and help them figure out how to regulate them, that does tie back into the resilience piece as well. But that's showing them that they can have emotions in a healthy way. And so that's important for their emotional development. And again, it's part of being a good enough mom. And there's a couple things that I do want to also point out what good enough parenting is not. So it doesn't mean low involvement. You have to recognize that perfection is unattainable, that it is going to create that pressure that we've been talking about, that it's going to keep you in a box if you're just sitting there trying to be the perfect parent, that you've got to lean into missteps are normal. Being focused on being responsive and attuning to your teen's emotional needs rather than striving for that flawless, perfect execution of your parenting. Another part is that in being a good enough parenting is not trying something once and being done. Actually, consistency is key, which is part of what we talked about too, is it's not just the one time or the 2 times that you've showed up. It's you've been showing up. It's the multiple times in a row that you keep showing up and trying, even if it feels like failure at first. You're continually showing up, continually doing the things, practicing that consistency, because what that does for your teen is it helps them get into a sense of predictability from you. They want to know that you are reliable, that you are stable. So again, this doesn't mean you're going to do it perfectly, but your teens need to know that you're going to be there when they need you most. And so it's being consistent and available and responsive when they are most distressed. I also want to point out again that the 30% rule is more about attunement. So not just like your physical presence, but how you are showing up and tuning into your teen's world. So I think for some parents, it can be like, well, I showed up to the volleyball game, but I was on my phone the whole time. And I understand after sitting through like a whole day of club volleyball, you might be done. And that doesn't mean you cannot be on your phone at all, but it means when your teen is out there on the court, and I know I'm using volleyball, but apply this to any sport, any activity, that you want to be attuning to what their needs are. If they've had a particularly rough day, maybe that means just like sitting there and cheering them on. But trying to attune to what they actually need, which is your presence, which is you. Not just like physically being there, but again, knowing, hey, I'm here for you. I'm watching you. I'm supporting you. I'm cheering you on. Another part is that good enough parenting isn't just being resilient. It's also being able to focus on how resilience helps us to build through repair. So I know that a lot of what I talk about is how to be resilient. That's the whole point of my podcast. And as I hope you've heard as a theme and will continue to hear as a theme throughout, is that resilience is something that is going to look messy. It might feel like failure. It might look flawed, but the reality is that's also part of you modeling for your teen how to repair. And that's something that's going to be important in your relationship with them. It doesn't mean you have to be sitting there groveling and apologizing. It just means you know how to have healthy repair with your teen so that they can then go off into the real world and practice their own repair when they mess up, when they fail, when they need to work on the things that have knocked them down in life. And the last kind of 2 points here when we're touching on the research of what good enough parenting is versus is not, is knowing that like being overly involved can also be detrimental. So I'm not saying you need to be showing up 100% of the time attuned, fully involved, doing everything for them, because that's also speaking to some of the over control that I see with moms, that it's okay that your teen is going to struggle and you don't need to be overly involved. It's not your job to fix everything for them. That doesn't make you a bad parent if you take a step back. It makes you a good enough one. And last point for this portion of the research is I want you to focus on quality over quantity. That the time spent with your teen should be focused on connection and engagement rather than just simply showing up, clocking in and clocking out. And especially when your teens are getting to that point where they've got school and then they come home and have homework or extracurriculars and sports and friends, and they're trying to figure out everything, you're already kind of feeling that sense of like, oh my gosh, do they even need me anymore? And yes, they do. But that time with them might feel a little bit more limited. It might feel more fleeting. And so again, I don't want you to be judging yourself based off of the quantity of time you're spending with them or doing for them. I really want you to focus on what is the quality of our connection right now? Am I so zoned out because I'm not practicing my own self-care, so I'm struggling to tune into them and their world? Those are things to pay attention to so that you can show up as the quality, good enough mom that you are. So I want you to focus on these 3 simple truths to re-anchor, reroot yourself in your identity as being a good enough mom. Good moms repair when they rupture. That's the first one. Like we were talking about with resilience, it's also about repair. The second one is good moms set boundaries, not to control, but because they care. And the third point is good moms model regulation, not perfection. Again, if you're going to sit there and expect perfection from yourself, you might as well already sign yourself up for failure. Versus flip side saying, I'm potentially going to fail and I'm going to do my best and keep going. That is gold right there. That is what good enough parenting looks like. And so these are 3 kind of anchor points that I want you to keep reminding yourself of because they are doable, they're repeatable, they're sustainable. That you can practice rupture and repair. That you can set boundaries, not control. That you can model regulation, not perfection. And if you're somebody that likes to have more to go in practice, I want you to even think about journaling this. So take a moment to reflect on what old rule am I ready to let go of? Or what new truth will I root into in this season? So write them down, put it on your fridge, on your mirror, so that you can start to see these things as you're going through your day. And that let this become your new rhythm. Let this become the new mantra of being a good enough mom, of being a good enough parent. So I know that was a lot of research and conversation today, but again, I think this message is one that is perhaps not being heard enough. Or if you're hearing it, you need to listen to it so that you can start taking action on it. But I am so excited that you spent time with me today, and hopefully your takeaway from today is working on believing for yourself that not only can you be a good enough mom, but that you probably are already one. So if you're ready to redefine what motherhood looks like for you with support, if you're like, Abby, I can kind of see this happening, but not entirely, I'd love to walk alongside you. You can always apply for one-on-one coaching with me, and I'll include a link below, but you can also send me a DM on Instagram, and that's at Parenting with Abby, so that we can help you not just be a good enough parent, not just be a good enough mom, but actually believe it and then get to see the fruit of living that out in your life. So I hope you subscribe, share, write a review. If you know anybody that you think would benefit from this, please send it their way as well. The more the merrier. And I want you to remember It's not about being perfect. It's about being rooted and being rooted in good enough parenting. All right. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I look forward to talking to you soon.